Good to be here. Always good to be here. Although I am supposed to be elsewhere from Friday. I'm scheduled to travel to Prague to cover another film festival in one of my many trips that I do throughout the year to cover film festivals for Fred Film Radio. But of course, right now, the world has gone crazy with this coronavirus thing, and, you know, where, how, and if I actually make it to Prague is definitely uncertain. Let's just put it that way. This coronavirus thing is driving me crazy. It's driving everybody crazy. And it's kind of funny having to worry about coughing and sneezing in public, and then feeling like John Hurt in The Elephant Man, trying to convince everybody around him that he is a human being. And it's going to also be interesting to be traveling with an Italian passport right now, because of course that's one of the most infected countries in the world. But you know, I'm in Ireland. I've been in Ireland for the past month. I'm totally healthy and fine. But if you don't hear from me for a while, there's a good chance that I've been quarantined somewhere. Anyways, I do have another stellar conversation to present to you for my Art Chat series this week. And it's with a friend of mine, Thessa Mooij. I've known Thessa from film festivals for years, speaking of film festivals, but I'll let her tell you what she does, what her day job is, let's say. What I was interested in talking about is that while I've known that she was a guitarist and a rock and roll fan and so on, I actually found out recently that she was recording her first proper record of her own songs. And this EP is going to be out later on in the year. It's going to be called 6 songs, but only 4 of them had been recorded, not even fully. And she sent them over to me, and I thought it would be great to just document her experience working on this record. I mean, it's pretty exciting. I was in a recording studio myself a few times with my band Lexington 125, but it's cool. So that's what we talk about, as well as her interest in music in general. And I think, I'm going to try to keep an eye on this project as a whole, and maybe record another conversation later on in the year, closer to the release of the album, and after she's had more experience completing the record. I said album earlier, but it's an EP. Completing the record, but also shooting a music video, because she talks about the possibility of shooting a music video. So all of that. Anyways, I'll leave you to it. Stay safe, stay healthy. But don't worry about this coronavirus too much. I mean, don't let the fear dominate your life. Could be worse. We could be living in the midst of a nuclear war. Maybe we are, and we don't know it. Enjoy.
Hey there.
Thessa, hello. This is take 2 of our phone conversation.
Yeah, take one was free too, but we'll do another one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're rehearsing at this point. We don't want too much of that now, But we're going to be talking about your exciting new music project that you have recently embarked on, and I had a chance to listen to some of your tunes, and really, really rocking stuff. But first of all, you were telling me earlier that you actually have a day job that is still in the arts, but it's not particularly or not specifically music related, right?
No, it's not as exciting as your job as web editor of Jess is, but I get to do the opposite. I'm a publicist. I talk to people about film. I'm a film publicist and based here in New York, but I travel a lot to film festivals. So I was just in London for a UK premiere of one of our films in the Berlin Film Festival.
And right now, where are you? Where in the world are you?
I'm at home in Brooklyn, Prospect Heights. So very happy to be here for a change.
How now you're based there. That's where you live. That's where you call home.
Yeah. I'm Dutch originally. I've been here for 18 years. Before that, I lived in London for 3 years.
I've never been there, and my impressions of that part of the world come from the movies and art and music, of course.
Yeah.
What is it that you like about Brooklyn?
Well, if we keep it to music, just the sheer amount of like super high quality music out there. There's pretty much all the best musicians in any genre flock to New York and to Brooklyn to make it here. And you could just walk into any bar and find amazing music. And now that I've started recording some songs, there's tons of opportunities for me to go out and play too, like open mic. So it's a great place to be for music too, among other things.
Right. So you'd say that it's a friendly place.
No,
No, you wouldn't.
there's a lot of opportunities. Um, no, it kind of is. Actually, it is. But I'm thinking for in terms of professional musicians. It's hard to get for them from that stage to playing everywhere to getting bigger gigs and really building a sustainable career.
Have you always sort of been interested in music and specifically learning how to play music?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. And these days when I'm recording, I'm just so grateful to my parents every single day. I was lucky enough to, as a young kid, I had music lessons in school in Holland. Everyone did, but they just sent me to a music school where I got extra additional lessons, me and my brother, and I learned to read notes from quite early on and, play the triangle and little recorder. And this was like, I would have been like 7 or 8. So, yeah, I think I had music lessons twice a week, and it was just when you're that young, it's like breathing, or you're learning another language in a way, which music is, and you just pick it up. It's like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. It's cool.
So you basically got that formative sort of musical education early on in your life.
That's right. So when I progressed from that, I just ended up playing guitar. I can't remember exactly why or how guitar, but I ended up with an amazing teacher in my hometown of Zoetermeer in Holland. And I played classical guitar. I mean, he did teach us a lot of, I got a major Beatles obsession out of it. We played Beatles songs, but it was mostly classical. And it was just me and one other guy, and it was really wonderful. We had weekly lessons, and I learned a lot, like especially technique.
Hey, who doesn't have a Beatle obsession, right?
I know. It's a good way to get started.
Back when you started actually learning to play the guitar, were there any other bands or artists that you sort of looked up to?
I think at that time, I was listening to a lot of stuff that my parents were lucky to have some crazy hippie friends. So it's like early 80s. So there was some residue from the 70s and, just a lot of singer-songwriters, Leonard Cohen. I remember buying a Leo Sayer album. John Denver. My parents were listening to like really heavy folk, like Magna Carta, and some of the folks. So Americana, singer songwriter, British folk, I want to say, and then of course I went through my regular disco phase, ABBA, Boney M. I think the Beatles were the first ones to go like, oh, this is a path.
Was the guitar always your instrument of choice? Like that's the one that you wanted to learn?
I think it was, yeah.
And this is the specific question that I was going to ask you is, what was the first guitar that you owned? Do you still remember the brand or anything about it?
I still have it. It's at my mom's place. I looked it up recently. It's German, of course. They make great classical guitars. I'm just blanking out right now, but I still have it. And a few years ago when I did pick up the guitar again and music, I was staying with my parents, and literally it was lying in their bedroom, and I picked it up and I started playing it again. Literally, it was still there. So very grateful for all of that.
Were you always consistent in learning your instrument, or was there a gap of time during which you just kind of forgot, or maybe life got a little too intense for you and you stopped playing for a while?
So I did my lessons for a couple of years, and it was really great. I just loved it so much. So you don't think of it in terms of having to to practice, or I just really could not stop playing. And I'm just so grateful that I learned so much technique from my teacher, Jacques de Bruin. Actually, I just established that a big jazz guitar player in Holland, Volker Tettero. We started with the same teacher. It's funny. I learned a lot of technique, especially the independence of fingers, left and right, but even, really strong fingers and a lot of control in my fingers. I learned zero about music theory, which I learned from a teacher that I had a couple of years ago. And then I guess what happened, it was my dad's fault too. So I was doing all these lessons, and at some point, my dad came home. This would have been 83, 84, with one of the first issues of the Face magazine, which was a super influential British magazine because it's the first in that time. It was a very dowdy time. It was like economically things were depressed, and it was post-punk, but this was an amazing magazine that brought together like post-punk music, lifestyle. Photographers like Anton Corbijn really started doing their thing. And so my dad had found a copy at the train station of The Hague in a bookstore. And he was like, oh, I thought this would be cool for you. And this really created a monster, this vaccine, because it was the start of my teenage rebellion. Like, I found this whole world opened up to me. I was like, oh my God. And it did have like a tiny little section of review of the Stray Cats, who were really big in London, and a British rockabilly band called the Polecats. And so literally I did what you do in those days. I would have to go into the next big town, The Hague, to look for a record store that even would have this magical 7-inch by the Stray Cats. And it wasn't easy because I would go to the mainstream department stores, their record store. And so at first I had to find, the alternative, the really cool record store in The Hague, and then go out and buy the 7-inch. And it just blew my mind. This whole world opened up for me.
Yeah. The good old days of the record stores. Hey, I think I can count them on half of the fingers on my left hand. The amount of the record stores that are left in Galway. Hopefully, it's not like that everywhere else in the world. Probably, it's not like that where you are right now. But it's kind of sad.
Vinyl has a resurgence, and there's actually a lot of great record stores popping up. Although, unfortunately, my favorite one called Norton Records, which has a lot of garage rock and rockabilly, they're also a label, but I used to have them around the corner here in Prospect Heights. That was great, but they're still online if you're interested in that kind of stuff.
But you see, the physicality of going to a record store. I remember when I was a broke teenager, I would love to just flick through the albums, and that's something that's really... And I don't think kids get to do nowadays. And I know that I'm sounding like, back in the old days we used to do this and that. But hey, I used to love just going into, especially in those stores where they had the secondhand records as well, and you would flick through the vinyls. And even though I didn't have a record player at the time, I just loved the fact that I could just flick through these magical discs, and I found out about a lot of great bands just by looking at the album covers and getting into it and interested. It's amazing, how, and I really miss that, but that's only because when I come to Galway we don't have as many anymore. That's kind of sad. But you mentioned teenage rebellion, and that just prompts me to ask you, would you say that you were a rebellious teenager?
Well, I was I was from then on, and it kind of made me. It's like, oh, all this classical guitar music, and oh, all this super super sexy rockabilly. And stupidly enough, I didn't make the connection in my head. Like, I could play this. I want to play this. Because at the time it was all about the guitar heroes and the blues rock, and the guy I had lessons with was like really, like into the Jimmy Page stuff. And stupidly I thought, well, if I moved to electric guitar, that's what you do, that's the thing. And I couldn't see myself like shredding and being a guitar hero, and the bending and the vibrato and the soloing, which is really, really stupid because I didn't talk it over with my teacher. And I was like, well, this classical stuff isn't for me anymore. And I could have talked it over, and it was all my own stupid fault. Why didn't I connect the dots? Why didn't I think, I want to learn how to play this rockabilly music? So I quit at some point. I did switch to bass guitar, electric bass, but I was too young, and that was all music theory, right? Because you have to build, you're building the building blocks of the chords, and like the 1-3, hitting the 1-3-5, and I, like, my teenage brain couldn't handle that. That was too much. Also, I made this stupid mistake of I have really short fingers, and especially my left hand pinky ring, which is the one you want reaching, reaching that elusive frets, and it actually kind of bent, and it points the other way. And I got to a point with classical, it's like, okay, well, I'm pretty good, but do I go to music conservatory? What's the next step? And I was so hard on myself. It's like, I have these stupid short stubby fingers. Again, I didn't talk to my teacher about this, and the neck was so wide, and then with bass guitar the neck was really long. And then to skip a whole bunch, when I started playing a couple of years ago, my husband was like, oh, but we still have this Telecaster that we moved from Amsterdam to London to New York, and why don't you play that? And the neck was perfect. I was like, if I talked to someone, they would have said, play guitar that suits your fingers and your neck, and but I made all these assumptions not talking to anyone, which is stupid.
No, I understand that completely. My I play a little guitar as well, and but I think the reason why I never learned how to play it properly was also because I had the same problem. My fingers are really short. And so I always thought that, well, grown-up guitars, that's the way they are, and you're not going to find any smaller. And then up until recently, I realized that that's not true.
And also, what actually my classical playing taught me, you can mold your fingers. And in my recent lessons here in Brooklyn, you can train. It's like training. Yes, when you first learn to play a bar chord, yes, it might be tough. Yes, it might hurt, but you can mold and sculpt your fingers, and it actually shouldn't matter that you have short fingers because you can train them.
I know, and if a guy like Mark Knopfler, he was naturally a right-handed guitarist, I think, and he learned how to play it on the way Jimi Hendrix did, and well, it wasn't his natural style, but on the other hand, he actually created his own style that was so precise. And when you hear his solos, you can actually hear that maybe it's because he had to put more thought into what he was playing when he first learned how to play that way, that's the way he has such a recognizable style now.
Yeah.
So sometimes, things that we see as flaws in ourselves are actually assets. That's the message, right?
Absolutely.
And now, okay, so we're going to skip ahead a little bit. And because recently, and this is very exciting, you actually got in a recording studio and you recorded a couple of tracks. And was this your first time in a recording studio recording songs that you wrote?
Absolutely. So I'm with this great little studio in Hoboken, New Jersey, with an amazing drummer and engineer called John Rochisano. He was recommended by a colleague of mine who is a singer-songwriter, Aaron Steinberg. It's great because John is a super laid-back guy, which I love about musicians, versus the film business, which is a little bit more intense. I'm just super proud to be recording in Hoboken, the home of Frank Sinatra and Yo La Tengo. So there you go. And he lays down the drum tracks for me. I sing, I play guitar, and then I send it to a bass player friend up in Vermont for bass. So that's been a great process.
Yeah, when you mentioned Hoboken, I instantly thought of Frank Sinatra. Oh, Blue Eyes. But so, what was it like doing it? I mean, were you excited and maybe a little scared too?
I was super scared, but I had to do it. It was really important to me, like having started up playing guitar again a couple of years ago, and then I had lessons for about 2.5 years from Jason Laughlin here in Brooklyn, who's, big rockabilly country guitar player, swing jazz. He played with Dill Watson and Emmylou Harris. So having come out of that, it was really important to me to grow out of the bedroom artist stage. And I had written a few songs and I wanted to record them. So it was super scary and a lot of red signal syndrome, especially the first 2 songs. And once I got the hang of it, it's been really fun. I'm actually going back to re-record the vocals of the first 2 songs because I've been working on my voice a lot. I've learned a lot about projection, and so I'm going back. And then I have 2 more songs to record, and I'll have the 6 songs EP.
Right, because you didn't just record the guitar, you also recorded the vocals. So we didn't talk about the vocal side of things. What were your singing chops like?
At first, not so great. I tried for the longest time to find a singer, and I started asking a lot of friends. And it's New York. People are always too busy. I mean, everyone is too busy. I'm too busy. So it's like, okay, I've got to do it myself. And I never thought of myself as a singer. I've never sung. I've never had a great voice, I think. But I discovered if I stay within a certain range, it could work. And then just with a lot of rehearsing, because it's a muscle memory. I've had a lot of help from this great app called Musician, which you get on your phone, and you can learn voice or guitar, piano, or ukulele. But I use the voice app and do it like every day for 20-30 minutes, and it helped with my timbre as well and consistency. And I just learned also becoming more familiar in the studio situation and getting to know the engineer better. I just learned to let go and project and emote as much as I could in the booth, in the vocal booth.
Yeah. And did you come across any singers then? You mentioned that you were looking for singers. Did you come across anyone who you sort of used as a guide, let's say?
Well, growing up, my dad and my mom's brother were really into big band jazz at the time. So when I got into rockabilly, it wasn't even big of a jump because the big band stuff, it's almost like rock and roll, right? Frank Sinatra, it's the precursor, like the beats and it's kind of sexy. So it started out with me a couple of years ago discovering a singer called K Star, with double R. She was a singer. She passed away, and it was her New York Times obit that made me discover her music. And I think she was kind of within my range, so that made me. She's a big band singer from Oklahoma with Native American heritage, and I think Billie Holiday said she was the only sort of white, quote unquote, white singer that could sing the blues. So she had a big band style, but it was very pared down and bluesy. And then more recently, the first couple of songs I recorded were kind of a little jazzy, swing jazzy. And then I have a new one that's more punky. So it's like, okay, what does my voice sound there? And I tried the out and out screaming Lydia Lunch thing, whom I love, but it wasn't me and it wasn't the song. And then completely randomly, I saw your Instagram story about the Pretenders, and I was like, of course, Chrissie Hynde, and started listening to a lot of her. And yeah, I realized we had the same range, and I learned a lot from her since. So she inspired, thanks to you, the vocals to my recent punk rock song.
Yeah, oh my God, Chrissie Hynde is one of my heroes. I love the Pretenders. They're coming out with a new album later this year too.
Oh wow, who produced it?
I don't know much about it because I'm still listening to her last solo album that she had out just a couple of months ago. So what I thought about doing as well, now that I know that there's 2 more tracks, actually maybe we can talk about those. But you sent me the first 4 tracks that you recorded from this EP, which, by the way, does it have a title yet?
For now, it's going to be 6 songs. Just 6. That's because I also have one of the songs. It's called 6 Strings. So I thought I'd keep things simple.
Yeah, right. Well, why complicate things, right? 6 songs sounds like a simple yet effective title. And
yeah.
So what I thought about doing was maybe we could do a little. See, I do this little thing on Jazz. It's a feature where I get the artist to say a couple of things about each of the tracks of their release, and I thought about maybe doing this for our little podcast here. A version of it, except an audio version of it. So I'm gonna go through each of the titles of the songs that I've listened to, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about each one of them, or whatever comes to your head. You don't have to get into too much detail, but I think it'll be kind of fun. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Sounds great.
All right. So the first one I listened to was 6 Strings. Actually, you mentioned it there. What can you tell me about that one?
6 Strings. It's about it's my love song to the guitar, but then also kind of a love song to my dad who passed away, and literally playing the guitar saved me from the worst of the pain. So it's really laid back, kind of finger picky guitar driven, solo, obviously. The solo came out of a guitar exercise during one of my lessons about 2 years ago, where I was just asked to create a solo using diminished chords. It's about, not being able to walk or speak or swim or do anything except play guitar. And I was really happy with the recording process. It's similar to some of my other songs, and I was worried it would be kind of the grunt of the runt of the litter. But then one day I just sat playing my acoustic Martin in bed, and I created a lead guitar over the song, just recording into my laptop, and that really punched up the song to a whole nother level. And then my amazing bass player friend Jonathan Frederick up in Vermont added double bass, and it's one of my favorites so far.
And next up, we've got one of my favorites of the set, the Cat Sitter Blues. I love this one.
Yay! And so I actually literally wrote this song while cat sitting for a friend, and who lives around the corner, and she has 2 cats, and they're great. My friend has a Strat, which technically, because I'm a Telecaster kind of gal, technically I know I'm supposed to despise the Strat and not even touch it, but I was like, okay, well, let's play it. And she had a little amp, so I fired it up, and it was so cool. And of course, none of the music snob, the gear snobbery, it's no use to anyone, not to me either. I just love the hotness of the third pickup. So that's that's the song I literally started writing while cat sitting, and it references their cats. It references my bass player's cat, big black tomcat, Jasper, and I want it to be a rockabilly song. That's actually one of the ones I'm going back to re-record the vocals, because they're not nearly punchy enough, and I have a whole lot more balls in the studio right now, and but that was a fun one.
Yeah, in terms of the gear, the people who are so attached to one single type of gear, I've always been suspicious of them because, well, what's the point of doing that? It's nice and fun to mix it up sometimes.
Absolutely. The only thing is, I just try to not get caught up in gear too much, especially with the pedals. I know pedals are big, but I bought one fuzz pedal because my absolute big heroes are the Cramps, and I'm such a big fan. I got a Gretsch guitar, and what I needed, of course, was a fuzz pedal. So I got a Goo Goo. It's called a Goo Goo Fuzz by Royce. Danish manufacturer, just because it was closest to the Cramps as I could get. And that's really the only one I use. So I try not to, I'm lucky enough to have amazing guitars, amazing amp, a Supro, and one amazing pedal. And it needs to be about the playing.
Oh yeah, when you consider what the great early bluesmen, the first ones to be recorded, could do with their crappy little guitars, most of them. That kind of goes to show that sometimes it's not about the instrument at all.
Speaking of which, so I have this old 61K value leader, which is a semi-hollow body. And when we still lived in Amsterdam a long time ago, we had a lot of American musicians friends pass by and stay with us. And one of them left the guitar, and I gave it to a friend in my hometown when I moved. And so recently when I took up the guitar and I was staying with my parents, and I was like, oh my God, I can't play rockabilly on my classical guitar. And then he gave me back the K, and it's so resonant. It's so beautiful. And it's Lonnie Johnson's favorite guitar. And Lonnie Johnson is my favorite blues player from those early times.
Hey, so moving on. We've got 25,000.
That's a protest song that I wrote inspired by a march to abolish ICE. And ICE is the immigration services. It's the rebranded Homeland Security, which takes little kids from their parents and imprisons them, unfortunately, as we know. So there was a protest march against that in Brooklyn. There were 25,000 people on the march. I saw this amazing choir perform the Revival Resistance chorus, and I thought, yes, I need to write a song about this. I need to write a protest song. So that's what inspired that.
One of my favorite quotes ever is Nina Simone saying it's an artist's duty to reflect the times. So you're a believer in that statement, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, the fourth song is Mexican Ditch.
I wrote that one inspired by a vacation in Los Cabos, Mexico. And I like the dark stuff, and it was inspired by some of the darker things I saw. What happens when you get a whole bunch of wealthy tourists or well-off tourists in an area that's economically fragile, and so it's about American expats. Literally, the verses are little vignettes of things that I saw there, like potentially, meth head drug dealers. I have a very vivid imagination. So it was just a loud American guy talking on his cell phone with a white pickup truck. And so I turned him into a meth head dealer fighting the cartel, the local cartel.
Right. So there's a bit of everything there. I mean, you've got a little bit of a sense of humor. You got a protest song. You've got your vivid imagination coming through. I think it's shaping up to be some statement, really.
It is, and I usually all the songs are inspired by actual things happening to me. They're not the next two ones. I want to be very sexy, very garage rocky, very Cramps, because I realized I'm still skirting what I most want to do is like the Cramps and the really out there rockabilly and sexier and deeper and darker. And so I'm have a new one, almost figured out the arrangements, ready to go, and it's more of a slow blues, but I want it to be super dirty and distorted. And then I want my vocals to be rich, but go a little deeper emotionally.
Yeah.
So that's the plan for the next one.
Is it hard to get emotional, like to represent your emotions vocally? Do you find that?
It is to me, because the emotions, I'm a guitar player, so they come out in the guitar playing, and then I go like, what? I've got to do it in the vocals. And it's hard because I'm a storyteller, but that creates a nice bit of distance, right? I'm not super professional musician in that sense. Like, oh my God, I need this emotion to come out. I have that feeling about things happening in society that I see around me, like, the family separation thing and the Mexican, tourism. So I want the next ones to be more personal. And again, so the next one, Tulsa, I went to Tulsa with my husband for a Bob Dylan conference. Can you imagine a conference full of real, actual Bob Dylan academics? And you'll appreciate this, being half Italian. There was 2 academics from the University of Rome talking about possibly the influence of Dante and other Italian writers on Dylan. It was fantastic. But it was my first time in Tulsa, and I didn't realize all the music and the history out there. So
I wonder if Dylan has read Dante. If I ever get to interview Bob Dylan, which I probably won't, but anyways, it's fine. But I'll ask him that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, but I'm also a big fan of all the bands you mentioned, and I'm a big fan of the rockabilly sound, the swing sound, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I hear that influence in your music. So I was very happy to chat with you about it.
Thank you so much. And I was impressed by the footage you sent me of your rockabilly stuff as a friend. Do you still play some of that, or do you still sing some of that?
Well, it's possible that in a parallel life I would have become a musician. Let's put it that way. But I think now it's just heartbreaking for me to think about it, because I did have a band, and it was kind of and I love playing with the band and stuff. So once we broke up, I realized that that was it, and so I stopped. I occasionally play the guitar, but never really that's as serious as I was back then, because I was really serious about my music. And so now I'm just as happy documenting artists making their artworks, and I've got a wider interest in the arts, but certainly music is I'm very obsessed with it. One of the bad things about my nomadic lifestyle is that I've had to cut down on my vinyl record buying, because I don't know where to store them.
Oh.
But thank goodness for Spotify. A lot of people knock it down, but I like it. I keep exploring all the time, and it's one of the best things that you can do is explore new music that's out there.
And their release radar is my favorite. It's actually pretty accurate. I've discovered amazing new stuff through their release radar. The only thing is they really don't pay musicians, not nearly enough. They pay the labels okay, but
yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, and actually that is the dark side of Spotify. It's unbelievable, and people would not believe how little they pay the artists. It's terrible, and they could definitely afford to pay more. I'm sure of it.
By the way, I just Googled the make of my classical guitar, which is Höfner. It's German.
Oh.
So there you go.
There you
go.
You
were asking about.
Tessa, do you know when you will be sharing this your work with the world?
Hopefully, it'll take a while. So you're catching me. You're the first one to catch me en route of my because I work with so many filmmakers. I have a couple of award-winning filmmakers that have offered to shoot my videos. I'll be doing that later in the year. Next up is this garage rocky track called Tulsa. And I'll be working with an Icelandic filmmaker, Martin Thorsen, who I worked with. And he's already committed to shooting the video for that. So it's a matter of recording the track in the next couple of weeks and then flying out to Iceland. And we'll take it from there. So I think by the end of the year, but I'll keep you posted.
I'll tell you what. Once you have the video shot, I would really love to record another conversation about what it was like to do that part of to do that part of the project as well, to actually shoot your music video.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever done one for yourself?
Yeah, I did. I did one. Yeah, but it was not good.
Up at the same film festival again, and then do some jam or do some.
That'd be cool. I'm not as good as you though. I never learned how to play any instruments properly, so that was my bad thing. I had a good voice.
There you go. I'll bring the guitar. You bring the voice.
All right. Thanks very much, Thessa.
Thank you.